Americans for Prosperity, West Virginia. Crescent, good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, guys. Thank you for having me.
Now, at one point along the way, I'd seen a press release from the governor's office, and you were in that press release, Crescent. You were headed to the governor's office.
Yeah. I was going to be his press secretary initially. I was announced in that first round of hirings, but I'm getting married this year, and my wife is going to be 36. So my main goal is to have a kid and start a family. So after some reconsideration and some begging from Jason Huffman, the state director, I decided to stay with Americans for Prosperity.
You know what? Good job by Jason to retain you there, and congratulations, by the way, on moving the family forward there, sir.
Yep. That's always been my dream, and I'm not a West Virginia native, but I'm a West Virginian by choice. I'm really excited to start a family here in West Virginia.
Well, our room is split because Mr. Gilstrap moved here a few years back, and Mr. Harvey was born here.
Yeah.
So we got them both.
And let me tell you, as having just passed my 40th anniversary, you're coming up on your wedding. Let me advise you that that's the last time you ever mention your wife's age on the air. Just saying.
Well, I always bring up my wife's age because she's exactly like a year older than me. So I always like to say I'm marrying older, and she does not like that. But
they never do. Yeah, they never do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you folks have been up to recently, which is your release that you typically do this time of the year before the legislature gets into session, which is in about a week or so here, and that's releasing your Pathway to Prosperity legislative agenda. What highlights are you looking for this year out of this new administration with a new governor and new leadership in the Senate and in many of the committees in the House?
Yeah, so we've been releasing Americans for Prosperity, Pathway to Prosperity legislative agenda since 2018. And over those years, we've had some big historic wins, most notably the Hope Scholarship Program and the largest tax cut in state history. This year, our plan is pretty simple. It boils down into 4 issues. One is repealing all Certificate of Need laws. The second is passing the West Virginia REINS Act. Third is defending the Hope Scholarship Program. And fourth is helping Governor Patrick Morrisey, the new governor, on his economic agenda. We think it's a historic opportunity with the election of Patrick Morrisey. He's the first day one Republican governor with supermajorities in the House and Senate. And so I think the people of West Virginia spoke loudly, and they're going to want big things coming out of our legislative body and from Governor Morrisey. So we're happy and excited to be working with him, and we hope for some big wins coming forward in the next year and the next 4 to 8 years.
Let's start with the biggest gorilla in the room on this one, which in my interpretation is repealing Certificate of Need laws. So West Virginia is one of a few states that still has CON laws in place. Have we repealed any of the CON laws over the years, Jason, Crescent, or are they all still on the books from their original time?
We've repealed a couple laws. We've nibbled around the edges a bit on the Certificate of Need laws, but we still, I think, are the second most regulated state when it comes to Certificate of Need laws. We have 23 different services that fall under Certificate of Need. And for your listeners that don't know what Certificate of Need is, it's a legislation, it's policy that was passed by the federal government in the 1970s. The federal government does this thing where they hang funding over states to get them to do certain things, and that was passing Certificate of Need laws at the state level. The funny thing is the federal government, within a few years, repealed its own Certificate of Need, and a lot of states have followed suit since, but West Virginia is not one of them. And how it works in West Virginia is there's something called the Healthcare Authority Board. Every time a service provider or new healthcare entity wants to come into your area, they have to go through the Healthcare Authority Board and essentially get permission from unelected bureaucrats to provide medical services to your area. It's an expensive process. It's very timely and complicated. And worst of all, if someone doesn't like competition in your area, they can come in and object to the new service coming to your area. So we think it's standing in the way of affordable, accessible health care in the state, and basically every research entity out there that has looked at Certificate of Need laws says that it has no effect on health care or a negative effect on health care. So we want to see all Certificate of Need laws repealed in the state so we can usher in new medical services to West Virginia.
We have done several certificate of need interviews, and for a variety of different businesses too, including trash service in the Eastern Panhandle. And those who defend the certificate of need laws say if you repeal it, it will allow companies to come in and cherry pick the easiest, lowest hanging fruit to profit. Whereas I'll give you an example of a particular trash company that said, we have to service all the areas of the community, not just the ones that are the easiest to reach. So if you permit anybody to come in and just cherry pick the easy customers, then we're going to have to raise rates tremendously for the hardest to reach customers. Any fallback or any reply to that one there, Crescent?
Yeah, I know that's the standard talking point for those who want to keep certificate of need in place, which is a protectivism policy to begin with. But the research says otherwise. The research says it doesn't affect access. It doesn't affect costs. It actually helps hospitals in the long run from expanding their services. And especially in the Eastern Panhandle, where you guys have two states that are very close proximity to yourself and a growing population, there's a lot of folks that support repealing certificate of need in that area because they can't cross the border currently and provide more medical services to the Eastern Panhandle. And when you have a growing population, you definitely need to bring in more medical providers. West Virginia has some of the worst medical or health outcomes in the country. So frankly, we do need more people coming to the state. And my wife is actually a nurse practitioner, works for a federally qualified health clinic, and works in primary care. So I hear about the woes of healthcare every single day. And frankly, CON and keeping CON in place is not the main problem healthcare has. We have an older population. We have a lot of people on government insurance between Medicaid, Medicare, and Medicaid or Medicare. So there's a lot of problems facing healthcare. Keeping certificate of need is not the problem we should be facing. It's the first step to bring in more healthcare services into the state of West Virginia.
John Gilstrap?
I have not done research on this, but just intuitively, it seems to me that to get rid of certificates of need in the Eastern Panhandle does make sense because there is a population to support it, and competition, I think, is always inherently healthy. But when you go to the parts of West Virginia that are less populated, go into the belly of the state, where doesn't a certificate of need actually provide a certain stability for a healthcare provider by giving a safety that there will be no competition, so that when they do invest into building whatever is the medical facility that they build for a sparse population, at least they have exclusive access to that population. Isn't that a good thing?
No, not necessarily. I mean, frankly, my wife, who's a nurse practitioner in the Clendenin area, they didn't have a doctor who was seeing adult patients for 2 years, and they still don't have one in their clinic. So without expanding and deregulating the healthcare industry, the people at Clendenin, if my wife, a nurse practitioner, couldn't see them without full authority, without being under a doctor, would not even have access to healthcare. So essentially, we need to deregulate the healthcare industry, which a lot of the problems are actually at the federal level, and at the state level, we have limited options on how do we bring more healthcare services into the state. And it's not like medical services are going to come in and provide one or two really niche things. That doesn't make sense from a business standpoint. So I don't think repealing certificate of needs is going to do anything to protect rural healthcare providers, because we're already struggling to bring any of those into some areas. And if we weren't working on deregulating the healthcare industry, there would be a lot of places in West Virginia that would have access to no healthcare, which is not a great thing for a state that has an older, unhealthy population.
So I'm looking at the at your website, the PDF here, the Pathway to Prosperity 2025 Legislative Agenda. And on expand educational freedom, it says, continue to empower parents to find the right educational pathway for their child's unique needs by securing the expansion of the Hope Scholarship. Is there a veiled condemnation of the public school system as it exists?
What do you mean by that?
Well, it seems like do it the other way. We're expanding educational freedom, which means to send people to not the closest school, but to the school that they want to have, which would imply that the closest school isn't the good one.
No, I don't think so. I mean, at the federal level, you just see an executive order from President Trump who supports education freedom. We had a similar executive order from Governor Patrick Morrisey. Realistically, it's all about the child at the end of the day. We want to make sure that the child is getting the best education. And that might not be the local public school system. It might be a Catholic education. It might be a Montessori education. So realistically, we want to make sure the money is following the student and going towards whatever their parents see fit as far as the education that fits their unique needs. I know I have a friend in the Charleston area who has 5 kids in the public school system and one child who has severe dyslexia, and they had to find an alternative education for that child because they weren't feeling the needs or meeting the needs of them within the public school system. So it's examples like that where, public schools might be the right fit for your child, but sometimes your child needs extra help or tutoring or a specific type of education that really helps them meet their version of reality and become their ideal self. And frankly, we're not against public schools. We think we should do a lot more to deregulate and make public schools better. Teachers got to be able to teach more. Money has to follow the student and more individualized learning at the local level. We need classrooms to be the right size, schools to be the right size. And I think you're going to see under President Trump, especially under his executive order and what he's doing with the Department of Education, more focus on the child and their unique needs when it comes to individual learning, regardless of what school system they're in.
Matt Harvey.
Good morning, Crescent. How are you?
Morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Hey, the supporting Governor Morrisey's economic agenda, is there any more specifics to that or any particular areas that AFP is more energized about than others?
Well, we were the first organization to endorse Governor Morrisey when he was running for governor in that competitive Republican primary. We supported him through the primary and the general election, and really because he was the right guy when it came to policy. Now, he's already come out with some executive orders on repurposing and right-sizing government, what he's calling the backyard brawl, which is looking at rules and regulations and how it affects our competitiveness around with our surrounding states. There's a lot of things we probably want to see when it comes to like occupational licensing, how do we shrink the size of government, rules and regulations, anything that's preventing our economy from growing compared to the surrounding states. But we're trying to be flexible on that. I know the governor is going to be having his state of the state within 2 weeks now, and we want to support him as we did in the primary and the general election because we think he's the right guy that can actually fix the government in the state, make it the gold standard of government, and also make us competitive when it comes to economy because our number one issue is population in West Virginia. We have to do something to attract families, and especially people my age or younger, to come to the state because that's the only way we're going to reverse the trends we've seen from the last 70 years is having pro-growth, pro-business policies that attract young people to the state and make us the best state to live and work and raise a family.
One way to make sure that happens is by making sure that broadband is available in all corners of the state, Crescent, because as you well know, your generation tends to work remotely in many occasions, and to do that, you got to have good broadband access.
My house would be a good place to start.
Well, I think what does the state get, like $2 billion for broadband expansion under the Biden administration? That's been a mess because of government regulations and tape that have just prevented really any lines being laid across the state when it comes to all that money. So it's things like that when the government gets in the way of really letting private companies or individuals fully realize what they want to do in a state or at the federal level. It's those types of problems that really prevent growth in the state. So I think Governor Morrisey is the right guy to get in there and really get the government out of the way, make it the best state to live, work, and raise a family.
And that brings us to the REINS Act, R-E-I-N-S. Tell me about that and how that would help the state with regulatory reform.
So REINS stands for Rules of the Executive and Need of Scrutiny. And this is probably where my passion is when it comes to constitutionalism of government and reigning in the state and local government. It's in response to the Loper Bright case and removal of the Chevron deference, which essentially at the federal level, which there's a federal REINS Act supported by President Trump and by Senator Mike Lee. And at the federal level, they're looking at the fact that Congress has taken back its rulemaking regulatory power from unelected bureaucrats that our current governor and when he was Attorney General made a career out of going after and saying you guys have overstepped your bounds when it comes to rulemaking authority. So at the federal level, we want to see folks, Congress specifically, take back its regulatory power and actually make sure that rules and regulations aren't getting in the way of average Americans. And when it comes to the state level, there's a lot of states that don't have authority over rules and regulations that are promoted by these bureaucrats. So in those states, it establishes a process to have that rulemaking review authority. Luckily, West Virginia has a very good rulemaking review authority, maybe the best in the country. And what our REINS Act does is beef up that process. When we have a rule going through the rulemaking review authority, we want to make sure that those bureaucrats are thinking about job creation, competitiveness with other states. How is this going to impact the business growth of the state? So what we want is impact statements that are looking at that, especially if the rule is going to cost $200,000 over 1 year or $1 million over 5 years. We want increased authority within that rulemaking review process to have scrutiny over those rules. So we really can, and this really coincides with Morrissey's backyard brawl. So we gotta have a full examination of the state rules and regulations and make sure that we are the freest state in the nation when it comes to that. So the REINS Act, I think, is a good step in the direction that's already going to beef up a process that we are probably leading the way on when it comes to the rest of the country.
Do you intend on succeeding in this effort for this pathway to prosperity legislative agenda that you have by directly contacting elected officials and more or less lobbying your cause, or is it through interviews like this and advertising and such to influence the people to contact their representatives to advance this cause?
Well, it's all of the above. I mean, as an organization, we're a grassroots-focused organization, maybe the premier grassroots organization in the country. So what we do is organize communities, knock on doors, connect average West Virginians with their lawmakers to tell them to support policy issues that expand freedom and opportunity for all West Virginians. So we'll be doing patch calls, we'll be doing postcards, holding events around the state, as well as digital and direct mail efforts that are kind of our bread and butter when it comes to our efforts. So yes, we'll be doing everything. We also think we have a champion within Governor Patrick Morrissey, who was elected to do some big and bold things, and since we've been supporting him since day one, I think he's highly aligned with everything we want to do. So we're looking forward to the next year, the next 4 years, the next 8 years on what he can do. So yes, what we do as an organization is connect folks to those lawmakers to embolden those that support our issues and hold those accountable that are against our issues.
Under the REINS Act, if passed, what happens to existing bodies of regulation like MSHA rules, which I have some familiarity, and it's a pretty dense set of rules.
What are MSHA rules?
Mine Safety and Health Administration. Do they get a retroactive review, or does the REINS Act only affect new regulations?
It would be new regulations, but essentially all rules should be going through the rulemaking review process because the legislature a few years ago set a 5-year sunset on basically all the rules. Now, I know Morrissey is going to force all the agencies to do a rule or a review of all their rules currently within probably the next six months to a year. But any rule that would be going through the rulemaking review process would get extra scrutiny under this REINS Act and any future rules. And frankly, that's just good practice. I used to work at the West Virginia Department of Agriculture, and you always have to be reviewing your rules and regulations. Commissioner Ken Leonhardt was big about that because we have to make sure that we're working for the people and making sure that those people can thrive in the state of West Virginia. So, but to your question, it should only do existing rules, but most rules are going to go through the rulemaking review process within a 5-year period.
Mr. Harvey, final question for Mr. Gallagher.
Yeah, Crescent, beyond loosening regulations or, getting rid of the unnecessary regulations, what else can West Virginia do to have a competitive advantage so we can bring back some of the population?
I think the biggest thing we could do is occupational licensure reform, universal recognition from other states. Arizona did something similar, and they saw 5,000 skilled laborers move to the state. I know that even extends to teachers. We have some of the worst certification laws when it comes to teachers. So we need to do more to invite those workers to the state of West Virginia. So if we can review those occupational licensure reforms to make sure that it's easy to move here and easy to do business and easy to have a career, then I think you're going to see a lot of people move to the state, because regardless of whatever issue it is that a politician might run on, jobs, and jobs are the number 1, 2, and 3 issues that people really care about. So if we can make sure people can move here, we can make sure people can thrive here with lower taxes, and make sure we get the government out of the way, I think we'll see a lot of people move to the state of West Virginia, just like I did 10 years ago.
You can find out more about the entire agenda at wvpathway.com, wvpathway.com. At Crescent, how can people find out more about Americans for Prosperity?
You can follow us on social media. You can reach out to one of our few GEDs, grassroots engagement directors around the state, or you can check us out on the website, americansforprosperity.org.
Best of luck with the nuptials, sir.
Yep, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Have a good day.